Hey there, Draconis here, and welcome to episode 176 of the Bamsters podcast. This time around it's going to be a little bit different, as we'll be bringing you an interview with Eek Games, developers of House Party. Now what makes this different is you'll be used to hearing two of us from the show interview our guest or guests, but this time around it's just me. Reason for this is we did a live stream interview one night last week while the Euro guys were sleeping, but we didn't want you to miss out on the interview if you couldn't attend the live stream. So, without further ado, tonight on our show we have Bobby from Eek Games to talk about the House Party game that they released on Steam. Bobby, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So I'll start off. I'm going to jump right into some stuff, more of the human interest stuff, then we'll move from that and we'll go into the game after that. How many of you are there on the team?
Not including, various voice actors and translators and whatnot, because obviously, we do a lot of repeat business with them. There's 7 of us on the core team. There's myself. We have Don, who does story implementation, community outreach, quality assurance. We have John, who's our operations manager, Henry, our writer, and we've got Ziga and Lai, our graphics team. And then we have Wen, who's kind of our Chinese liaison. Our games actually sparked quite a bit of interest in China as well. So she speaks in the Chinese forums, answers questions, and she actually did a lot of the earlier Chinese translations of the game as well. And we've actually, she's kind of been short on time lately, so we switched over to using a company, but she's assured us it's very good quality. So we're in good hands.
Excellent. Well, I guess how many different languages has the game been translated into?
As of right now, I'd have to check on Steam to see it looks like we have Chinese, French, Russian, Spanish, and I believe there's one more, German. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we typically go by where the interest is. If there's if we see a lot of players asking for a particular language, we'll because I mean, obviously it's a lot of work to keep up all the game content and translate it every release. So if there's interest there, but we'll certainly support it.
Okay. And then for the folks that are watching and or listening, who are you and how did you get into making games?
My name's Bobby Ritchie, and I honestly game development was I'm seeing that the game audio might be a little too loud and they're having a hard time hearing us.
I'll shift that down.
But I got into I was a programmer by trade, and after I got out of college, I started taking just programming gigs here and there. I worked for my own on my own for a while, but I mean what programmer doesn't want to be a video game developer? You know what I mean? So it was something that kind of always intrigued me, and my first venture into it, I wrote this demolition derby game. It was called Crash Derby. And I figured, hey, let me try my hand at writing a video game. And I partnered up with this 3D modeler, and we created this game. And it was actually the #1 game on what's the site? It was like Woogly. I don't even know if that's still around, but it was like this big, because it was like a browser game, kind of like you could play it on Facebook, and you could upgrade your cars and things of that nature. It was a lot of fun, but
okay.
But yeah, I started doing that, and it went pretty well. Then I kind of got out of it for a little while. I did some other stuff, and then I always wanted to write a game that had like characters in it. I always wanted to do something. Demolition Derby was kind of easy because the cars were all like box colliders and things like that, and easy physics. And I wanted to do and then I started working on House Party. I would say about 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay. All right. So the game itself has been in development for anywhere between 5 to 6 years now.
Yeah, if you count the time that I worked on it on my own, for sure.
Okay. Well, how did you put together the team then? It
was really just a solo passion project for a while. And the team kind of came about or somewhat organically and somewhat and at certain times we actually posted job positions online and filled them. But Don actually is a friend of mine from way back, and he I was just telling him about my game, and he was like, and he's always been interested in video games. He's a professional video gamer, so he was he took an interest right away, and it was funny because I was like, hey, check out this game that I wrote, and he sent me back a spreadsheet of all the things that he found wrong with it. So, and I was like, wow, this is great. So I fixed everything, and I sent him another one. I said, here you go. Here's another version, and then he sent me another spreadsheet. And at one point in time, I said, do you want to get paid for this by chance? And so he was kind of the first. He was kind of the first team member that came on board. And then Jonathan actually is a good friend of mine as well. We play together in a band, and we're good friends with each other's families, and we just I was telling him, listen, the day-to-day stuff is getting out of hand. I need somebody to really get more hands-on with management. And then he kind of offered himself up, and because he was just leaving a management job at another company, and I said, yeah, sure, come on board. Well, and he's been with me for I think just about 2 years now. And then Henry, our writer, he came on through. I think Jonathan actually scouted him out and found him, and so he's been a member of the team for a while now. And then Ziga Lai, our graphics team, I think they reached out to us. They were just kind of asking, "Hey, do you guys need any help with graphic work? We saw your game, we like it," and we checked out. Well, actually, it was Ziga who reached out, and we checked out his art, and he was really good. And I think you know what it was. He sent us a 3D rendering of a whiskey bottle, so that kind of sealed the deal for us. So.
Oh yeah, I like him already.
Yeah, right. We're like, hey, that looks better than the whiskey bottle that we have in game. Maybe we should hire this guy. So, so it's it's just some came on organically, and some were just kind of actual job positions we put out. We've had some other members that have come and gone throughout the years too, but our current team is as I described earlier.
So then, like, what part of the country are you guys based in?
We're actually all over, Northeast, Southeast. We got Netherlands. I think one of us is moving out west. So we're really like all over the map. Our company headquarters is in Oregon, but we're all kind of like a work from home team. So we do conference meetings every day, and we collaborate online.
Sounds like you may have some of the same or similar scheduling headaches that we have on our show as well.
Oh yeah, all the time. Well, not only that, but we work with third-party companies in Germany, and and so yeah, it's crazy. It's sometimes hard to get meetings together.
Yeah, with our group, there's anywhere between an 8 and a 9 hour difference between us. So yeah, it can be fun sometimes.
And you can imagine with our translators too. It's they're all over the world, so it's yeah.
So I guess for the folks that are tuning in, maybe who don't know what House Party is, why don't we have you give an overview of what the game is?
House Party is I guess we kind of advertise it as a kind of a sexually charged adventure puzzle game. It's kind of a throwback to like those old adventure games that they don't make anymore for some reason. And I used to love those games growing up. So I was always a big fan of like Leisure Suit Larry and Space Quest and King's Quest, all those old games from on the computer. But yeah, and I felt like the genre kind of died. Like, and even the like the newer games that even like advertise themselves as adventure games just weren't the same. You know what I mean? Like you'd make choices, but it would you'd make one choice in the middle of the game, and it would affect like the ending or something. And because one character would be there or not be there in the ending, you know what I mean? It wasn't very dynamic or fluid. And I really wanted to try to create something that was fluid, where you could actually see the consequences consequences of your choices immediately. And that was kind of the main goal of the game. So I kind of combined, but I wanted it to be like, exciting and fun too. So I kind of combined, I mean, if I had to pull like my three major influences, it would be like those adventure style games, Grand Theft Auto, and The Sims, and kind of mashed it all into one game.
All right.
Yeah. Which was pretty ambitious if you think about it back at the time for a solo developer, but somehow it worked out.
Well, and so one of the next questions I was going to ask is what kind of drew you to making a game like this, but it sounds like you made it because you missed seeing games like this in the industry.
Yeah. And it, I used to love those games. They were so cool. I even love, and it's funny too, because House Party was notoriously kind of, cryptic and hard at, especially when it first came on the scene. People were having a hard time figuring out the puzzles and whatnot. And I chalked that up to like I used to love those old adventure style games. Where it was like, you literally had nothing to go on. You literally had to type commands into the computer and hope that that interpreted what you were trying to say, and hopefully it does what you were trying to make it do. So yeah, that was kind of my gaming background. So and I kind of have an aversion to the modern day like hand holding that goes on in video games too. So so I intentionally made it a little little difficult, I guess.
It kind of reminds me a little bit, you remember the old King's Quest games?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, you type in different things hoping it will do something. There was one of them, I want to say, was it maybe King's Quest 3 or something? I think you're in the Wizard's Tower. But just for shits and grins one time, I was like, let's type kick the cat, and you do it, and you kick him right out the window.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about it is, you try something just for the hell of it, and when you find out that the developers thought of that, you're like, oh my God, that's so cool, So, and that's exactly what we're going for in House Party. We kind of made it sandboxy where the player can just go around and do whatever they want, but we programmed all this AI to respond to it, which I think is really cool.
Well, okay, and then speaking of the AI and the different characters that are involved, where'd you guys draw inspiration for each one of these characters that you have at the party?
Oh God, I was kind of going for just like they're not inspired by people, but they're more so inspired by like personality types. So I just kind of thought like, hey, I'm going to make like the ditzy hippie girl, and hey, I'm going to make like that girl who thinks she's smarter than everybody else. And oh, I'm going to make like the douchebag guy who wants to beat everybody up for some reason, which ended up being he was straight edge and he hates alcohol, So, so I kind of like tried to make parodies of like personality quirks, but then like to the nth degree, you know what I mean? Just bring them out like, and so really what the game ended up being is you're trapped in a house with a bunch of psychopaths, but it worked out well. I mean, we've come to love all of our characters very dearly, and seeing them, even just like getting our voice lines in for new content, it's like, oh my God, I can't wait till Frank says this line.
Yeah, they're definitely each one of them they're definitely characters.
Oh yeah.
So then, is your character supposed to fill a specific role in this, like each one of the characters that you interact with?
No, the player character is supposed to be what you make it. It's a choice-driven game, so your choices are going to shape how the party reacts to you. But more specifically, your choices are going to shape what kind of person you want to be at the party, and that was always the main point of the game. Very very early on, my two goals for the game were to make it, number one, I want it to be funny, but number two, I wanted choices to matter, and I wanted to give the player as much freedom as possible in the context of their choices, where they could really, see the effects of what what choices they make. And that adds a lot of replay value too, because you can go back and try things differently, and you will get different outcomes. You'll get different dialogues. You'll get different scenarios. So it's a lot of fun. If you played through the game once, you might want to go back and try it with different choices, because you'd be surprised at the different content that pops up.
Well, and you talk about, wanting it to be funny and stuff, even the warning label that starts the game and some of the stuff that I've seen that you guys have published out about the game and in some ways about yourselves, you seem to have a pretty good sense of humor, not only about the game, but about yourselves as well.
Yeah. I mean, I've incorporated, even the Crash Derby game I wrote way back when was very, there were a lot of comedy elements in it. Like I actually did all the voiceover work myself. I was this crazy, goofy announcer who, commented on what was going on throughout and, cracked jokes and whatnot. And even like the parts you could upgrade your cars with were all like, ridiculously, silly things. And House Party was no different. I wanted absurdity. I wanted the puzzles to sometimes be really absurd. But I wanted the characters to be absurd, but I wanted to somehow ground it all in like a dialogue system that felt very like real and casual. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think we accomplished that. But I mean, humor, yeah, for sure. Humor is pretty much ingrained in everything that I do. So, even the warning label at the beginning of the game, I mean, we really drive it home that this game is a comedy first and foremost, right before you even get to play the game. So. And that's the thing. Some people do take this game way too seriously. It's a comedy, people. Calm down.
So when you were designing the puzzle aspect of the game, or the social interaction puzzle, did you guys did you figure out how you wanted a certain character arc for each one of these characters to end and then wrote towards that? Or was it one of those things that just kind of naturally evolved as you were working through different dialogue options?
Both, actually, because because I had written a lot of the original stories back when the game was first being worked on, and a lot of that stuff was just kind of thrown in there just based on what was possible with the programming that I already had in place, what kind of game mechanics were already present. Sometimes I would create new game mechanics because I had a certain idea. So it would kind of be like push and pull, where sometimes I would think of a good story arc and that would push my development, and then sometimes I would like create a great new development feature and be like, how can I work this into a story? But now things are different, because now we've got a team. We've got a dedicated writer who really has his hands in everything that goes through, comes through the game now. So now we do storyboard. We do write everything out ahead of time. We think about what kind of assets we're bringing in and what how much work is going to go into that. We make sure we have that stuff before we start implementing story and things of that nature. And even working with Letty and the Game Grumps, obviously we need to be very communicative with them about what their content's going to be and whatnot. So yeah, we kind of have to be that way, especially with a team, because it gets really confusing when one person's just doing things and another person has no idea what's going on.
Oh, and how much fun is that, writing for branching story dialogues? I've got a buddy of mine that was doing a little bit of that just for like a fun party game, and I think he said he tried doing it in like PowerPoint, and because he didn't have anything else available to him at the time,
right.
And it was just a mess. Like, it was just insane.
Yeah, God, that's a good idea. I'm sure our story implementer would love if I presented to him and said, "Hey, we're going to do everything on PowerPoint from now on. You're just going to have to go slide by slide and figure out what goes right." No, it's we have a special. Actually, we use a Unity plugin that it's designed for actually writing dialogues, and we use actually that for storyboarding, because you can kind of flowchart everything together in terms of where it's going to go and what it's going to be. So it's a good tool, but it's not the one we use internally, because I program my own custom. I'm sure you've seen we have a custom story creator, and we actually internally use that same story creator to script the main story of House Party, which is cool, because that means that the players have as much control as we do over writing their own stories as in terms of content in the game.
Oh, that's cool. I like to see that, because there's anytime a game's going to come out with any kind of tool set that allows players to create things, I love it when we get the opportunity to work with it's not always going to be the same tool set, but as similar a tool set as possible, if not the same tool set. So for the player made creations.
Oh yeah, it's exactly the same tool set. We literally just piecemeal that code out and give it to the players, and they can actually using the tool, they can actually export the story straight into House Party and see their game and test it and run it, and it's pretty cool.
Okay, well, is there any chance, I know I saw when I was looking through some of the stuff on the Steam forums, there's a few folks that are asking, is there any chance that we'll be able to customize the way our own character looks at some point?
Not in any major way. If bandwidth allows, we might do something like allow for different skin tones, different skin colors, eye colors, hair color. But I mean, that's a big maybe. It just depends, because we are pushing to have a playable female character soon too. So that's gonna, so customization is not high on our list of priorities, because we're trying to release sometime next year, come out of early access, and we're actually going to start working on a second title once we do that. So we got to kind of cut ourselves off at some point and say, listen, this is the amount of content that we're going to do. We haven't 100% solidified it, so I'm not going to say no, but I'm not going to promise anything either.
Oh, that's understandable.
Yeah.
Well, and so the way that it's advertised, the way it comes across, and what you see, I think most times is, you get your straight male perspective of walking into the party, and then if someone wanted to play the game as a gay or bisexual character, is that option in there for them to do that?
Yeah, actually, from the very get-go, my vision for this game was basically to have every non-player character in the game be what I called sexually malleable, I guess. So I mean, that's the thing, is like it's based on player choice. So we kind of wanted to have these personalities that were gonna, like, if you started, because the story is your buddy invites you to the party, and obviously the question to be asked is, well, what happens if you start hitting on your buddy? We want to have a response for that, and we want, we're going to build romance options for all of the characters, male or female, or both. We have we already do have proclaimed bisexual characters in the game. I think there's at least 2 of them that are already worked into the main story. Actually, 3 of them. But yeah, it's basically going to kind of be a free for all. And that's the thing. It's like, it's whatever the player however the player plays the game, that's how the game's going to shape. So if you're wanting to play it as a gay person, then you absolutely can. And the characters that, the party will kind of morph that way, and the characters will respond that way. But if you want to play it as a straight guy, same way, same thing. The party will adapt to that as well.
Okay, that's cool. Now, at one point, as you're wandering through, you go out into the garage and you see the beer pong table. Are there other things that would be considered like mini games that you get to play inside of the game, or do you ever actually play beer pong against an opponent? Because just as a disclaimer, at this point, I think I've played around 3 hours worth of the game, so I know there's a ton of content I haven't gotten to yet.
Right. No, that's something that we want to do eventually, is get like a beer pong game going with one of the other party guests. We haven't done it yet. We built in the functionality just kind of, and we had the functionality ready, like the mechanics ready. So we said, why not put it in the game and let the player play with it? And beer pong at a party, obviously, it fits. So, but we haven't really fleshed that out in terms of getting AI to participate. But it's definitely something that we could see before release. As far as other mini games, again, we have a very tight schedule leading up to release. It's something you'll probably see more of in our future games, but as to whether or not there'll be another mini game in House Party, maybe.
All right. So, as talking about, early development and stuff like that with the game, this was one of the last games to make it through Greenlight, wasn't it?
Yeah. We were on the trail end of Greenlight. And this game got greenlit almost immediately, because right after I submitted my application, PewDiePie played the game. So, so yeah, that happened very quickly. Greenlight for me was a very positive experience. Now they have it set up where you just pay an entry fee, I think, and I haven't done that yet. They actually gave me a token to they gave me like a voucher for another free application on Steam. So when we do our second game, we don't have to pay the entry fee, just I guess because we're already an established developer now. But it's as a Greenlight was fairly easy for me. I know a lot of people have complained about it and had some issues with it in the past, but for us it was a very positive experience. We got a lot of positive comments and support for the game right from the get-go. So
okay. Well, so then the game goes through Greenlight, and it was on sale for I think about a month, if I read correctly, and then Steam pulls it. What happened there?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, here's the thing. When I thought about what kind of game I wanted to write, I said, let me look out there and see like what other kinds of games are there. I had this engine that I wrote. It was a character engine, and I was ready. Like I was like, you know what, this character engine's working well. I want to put a game out. What am I going to write a game about? And there's so much violence and gore, and just everybody's trying to outdo each other with how sick and twisted they can get in that genre. But I didn't see really any games just about like with like sexual themes or just American Pie kind of humor or really nothing, except the closest thing I would say is like Leisure Suit Larry maybe. But that game, the original creator of that game hasn't been involved in that game for years now, and it just hasn't been what it used to be since he left. So I kind of wanted to do something in that token. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to do a game about sex. So do I put sex in the game? And I'm like, it's 2015. Why not? You know what I mean? Like, who's like I thought we had evolved beyond this, but apparently not, because when my game hit, the Steam people lost their minds because I had sex in the game, and I didn't bother to censor it because I thought we have all this crazy violence in video games already. Why would I bother censoring sex? And as it turns out, Steam, they sent me an email. They're very nice about it. They basically told me that I needed to censor just the sexual intercourse, and I was like, okay. And as it turns out, it was really easy because I had already built in at a request from people who were streaming the game, like in-game censors, because they were streaming these games on YouTube, and YouTube didn't allow nudity. So they basically had been begging me to put in-game censors so they didn't have to mark them all up in editing after to try to get rid of all that stuff. So all I did was I just wrote some code to kind of turn those censors on by default on Steam. And but then I guess Steam reversed their decision a couple months later, and they decided that they're going to allow everything. But then we just didn't bother changing it at that point, because when you're writing a game, especially when it's in early access, it evolves, so now we've kind of evolved to the point where we're okay with the game being what it is and censored by default, but we offer a DLC patch for people who want to remove the censor. It's certainly not mandatory for the game. I think if you take the amount of actual sexual intercourse in the game and compare it to actual other content, you'd probably only have about 5% that's actually those types of scenes. So so it's not, it doesn't hinder the game in any major way. But then again, we didn't want to take, again, we have a game about choice, so we didn't want to take choice away from the player. So we said, okay, well, here's the game. It's censored by default because, they made us. But if you want to uncensor it, here's a patch,
Well, I think that's probably another one of those things that's just a big difference between here and, say, Europe. Nudity is not as big a deal in Europe as it is over in the U.S. But
yeah, it's definitely an American type of mindset. And I, because we deal with people all over the world, and companies we work with react the same way. It's like, and it's funny because, European companies, German companies, they're all like, hey, this game's cool. This is great. It's great to be involved in this. This is really fun, and then, we talk to Americans and they're like, what kind of game is this again?
Well, and I guess so, because since we're on the topic of it being censored and things like that, is there any content in the game that would be considered non-consensual, like even including things like, you as the party goer not necessarily drinking, but then, feeding drinks to one of the chicks at the party and then getting her drunk so that you can lower her inhibitions and then go have fun with her?
No, we don't have any storylines that are specifically like, oh, you have to get a girl drunk to sleep with her. The stories are way more complex than that. And there's you've met Frank, so that alcohol is not a thing at this party. And that's by design too, because that is a thorny topic, and we do obviously have to skirt around acceptable lines for things like that. So it's there are only two quests in the game that really involve alcohol, and in one case, it's Stephanie who wants to get drunk, and in the other case, it's a character who gets drunk kind of behind the scenes when you're not even with them. So, and she just comes up and like, hey, I'm drunk, So, but no, it's not that kind of game. The stories are just more complex and more challenging than that. We do, and it is a sandbox game, so you can go and you can literally just go collect beers around the house and hand them to characters, but that's not gonna grant you any leeway toward sexual activity with them or anything like that. Usually they just fly off the rails and quit their jobs or start fights with each other, things of that nature. So.
Yeah, Frank's a real pain in the ass.
He is, yeah.
Yeah, I understand you guys were at least considering some kind of combat mechanic. Is that true, or
not considering it? It's fully implemented in our latest alpha that just hit. We're doing internal testing on our Patreon with right now, and it's cool. It's really we were kind of nervous about how it was going to come out, and one of the biggest complaints were people they just couldn't defend themselves against Frank. So but the thing is too is like it's not really a game about fighting. It's a game about the house party and the player just making choices, and just seeing what they can get into. But so fighting wasn't really something that was on our radar, but we got a lot of requests from players wanting to see it, and so we tried our hand at implementing it. And I think we actually came up with a really cool system. Now, of course, Frank's still going to kick your ass if you try to fight him, but they're at the risk of giving away spoilers, there is a way that you can actually, boost your stats and actually take him on. So it should be a really fun addition to the game.
Rochambeau?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to getting an opportunity to, even if I can't kick his ass, at least get a few shots in before he beats me down.
and you can do that, yeah. But of course we let you beat up Patrick, because who doesn't beat up Patrick? So.
Yeah, nobody seems to like that guy very much.
He does it to himself, really.
So when it did get pulled from the store, how long was it off before you guys got back on again?
Oh, it was probably only a week or two at most. Like I said, I had most of the code in place already to do the censorship, so it was just a matter of turning it on in the right places and sending builds to Steam and saying, "Is this it?" It was like a blind guy doing a Rubik's Cube. I was like, "Is this it? Nope. Is this it? Nope. Is this it? Nope. Oh, okay, there it is." Yeah.
Well, and I understand this caused problems with folks that were playing the game on Twitch as well.
Yeah, Twitch has been very well. Twitch is notable. I mean, as you probably read the disclaimer and what we had to say about Twitch. Yeah, they've been very. It's funny too, because they have a page. If you go to Twitch and you look up their content policies, they have a page that describes the stuff that's not allowed on Twitch. But it's funny because they say on that page that they don't allow anything with, extreme violence or sexual content. But if you look at the list of games, it's like sexual content, sexual content, sexual content, sexual content, there's nothing on there that's banned because of violence. So it's a complete, what are you going to do? It's America.
That's funny. So, do you think that the controversy has actually helped you guys with sales, or maybe hurt sales? Or?
No, it definitely helped. Despite all of the, that's the thing. People want to hate this game, because of its content. But I mean, the game has got it's got a charm to it, and people have really been enjoying it. We just hit the 500,000 sales mark, which
is incredible. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, for an indie developer, solo developer to now be in a position where I have a company and a staff and, we're going strong. It's just, it's great. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better outcome.
Well, and early on, I guess you guys had Rock, Paper, Shotgun look at it, and they called it, what was it, the worst game of 2017? So
yes,
is that how you knew you made it big?
Our first award. We were so proud. Yeah, that article. It was an interesting read. I read the article and I laughed, and then I read the comments and I laughed some more. It's I think it's funny. Like a big tenet of mine has always been, because I've always been an entrepreneur, and one of the things I've always said is you've never made it big until you've got somebody who hates you. Because seriously, like if you're trying to do your thing and you're not quite established yet, or you're not out there and and somebody comes across it and they're like, yeah, this is okay, whatever, you know what I mean? They're not going to hate it, you know, because they're just be like, this is okay, whatever. But like, if there's one thing that people hate more than anything, it's when other people like something that they dislike. So then you get these haters. So when you have the haters, that's when you know you've made it. You know what I mean? It's like I was like, yes, I was like, finally some some hate, throw it at me, you know? No, I mean, I don't know. I felt like his article was a little disingenuous, though. I felt it's kind of unfortunate because I feel like it was more of a, like he took the position to get the controversy. You know, he wanted to write a controversial article, which is kind of unfair to his readers because he's there kind of as a liaison to, you know, discovering new games for his audience. So to do something that's going to, like, you know, just drive you more traffic and be controversial is kind of dishonest. I think maybe he really feels that way about the game. If he does, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you know, you can play the game for 5 minutes and realize he's completely wrong in his assessment. I mean, the game's meant to be funny. It's not meant to be taken seriously. And if you can't separate fantasy from reality, then you know, you're not going to have a good time.
If you can't separate fantasy from reality, maybe you shouldn't be playing video games.
Exactly, right. I mean, in general, right.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. I mean, and he said, you know, granted, I will give him this. He said it was a bad game, and he was right. I mean, it was. I was a solo developer working on the game by itself for 2 years. Of course it's a bad game. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, there's only so much I can do in a 2-year span by myself. You know, and yeah, there was a lot to be desired. But I mean, to write a hit piece on an early access game from a solo indie developer, I mean, like, what are you trying to prove, buddy? You know?
You know, you say that, and we've gotten an opportunity to talk to a bunch of indie devs over the last few years, which has been great. And I've been amazed sometimes at just how small the teams are and the kind of content that they're putting out. So it's great to see that even small teams can do these kinds of things.
Well, I mean, with the you know, the comeuppance of, you know, engines like Unity and Unreal, it's getting so much easier to focus on just writing a good game rather than, you know, getting bogged down with all, you know, the behind the scenes stuff. I mean, granted, you still need, I mean, the Eek engine itself is well over, I would say, probably maybe like 200,000 lines of code. And that's just the engine that drives our game and our custom story creator. And then there's the scripts that actually drive the AI, which are huge. So, I mean, there's a lot that goes on top of that, but it was really nice not having to worry about the ground mechanics and being able to just, you know, if we needed, you know, a certain element, we could outsource it in the form of an asset, you know. And the game started out with a lot of assets, and that saved me a lot of time in the early development. But now we have a team that's pretty much capable of almost anything. So it's great. So now we're slowly kind of re-optimizing the game using our own assets and our own input. And the game's getting more optimized and it's looking better and it's feeling better and it's playing better. So, but yeah, I mean, Unity is a great way. Our game's developed in Unity, and it's a great way to kind of kickstart the process, you know. Awesome.
Okay, well, I want to shift gears just a little bit and go back to something that you kind of touched on and mentioned just a little bit earlier.
Sure.
And that was, I understand you guys had a contest for folks to appear as characters in the game. Mm-hmm. And so how did that idea come about, and how did the whole process work?
We had a PR team that we were working with, and you know, we you know, kind of brainstorming, like, you know, ways we could engage our players more in the game, because this game is all about the players, honestly. Like if it weren't for such a robust player base that got behind this game and really, you know, supported it and defended it against, you know, the rock paper shotguns of the world, you know, it wouldn't have grown into what it is today. So we wanted to, you know, give back to them, and we thought a good way to do that would be to let them decide what kind of content we put in the game and who we put in the game. And as it turns out, the Game Grunts had just finished a huge series on House Party, and their fan base was rearing for more. And what happened was, actually, it's kind of a funny story. One of their fans actually entered Dan into the contest without his permission. And of course, he posted it on the Game Grumps subreddit, and of course he was in first place within a matter of minutes. But then it kind of got back to us that this wasn't a legit entry, so we actually went and removed it. And I think actually another influencer, Critical, was in second place, and he kind of moved up to first place. So for a little while, it was looking like he would have been the one that would have made it in. But then the Game Grumps actually announced that they were officially entering the contest. And again, within minutes, they were number one, and they entered as a duo, which was kind of against the rules, but we let it slide. So, and then there's Letty Does Stuff. She is an influencer, and she's actually a longtime fan of the game. She was following our game from back when I was just an indie dev on Patreon, with a handful of subscribers. She in fact she was I found her because she was streaming really old versions of the game, like super old versions, and I messaged her and I was like, hey, if you want a Steam key, just let me know, because you're playing version 1.2, so and she wrote back and she was like, no, she's like, you're the guy, aren't you? Oh my God, I love your game. I've been playing it. She's like, no, I was streaming that on purpose because, I love this game. And I just wanted to show my followers, what it was like way back in the day. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I don't even have those builds anymore. You mind sending those to me? But yeah, and she entered the contest too. And she actually won. She won by a landslide. It doesn't look that way because the way it was set up, where it was by percentages based on all of the users and not split between the men and the women. So it looked like she had a much lower percentage than she actually did because the Game Grumps had such a high percentage. But she actually did win it by a landslide. And she's got a fun audience, and so she was a blast to work with. We finished her storyline I think it was last month we put it out. And now we're working on Leah's storyline because we're working on getting the Game Grumps models together, which came out great, by the way. Their likeness is really there, and we're just finishing up the modeling, and we'll probably release some spoilers of what they're going to look like in game soon. But then our next development cycle is going to be dedicated to implementing their storyline, which we've got a storyboard for, and it's a lot of fun. I think both the Game Grumps community and the Game Grumps themselves will like it. So
okay, so since you're actually using we'll say online personas, is this, when you put these folks in the game, is it intended to be just fictional characters that look like them, or is this supposed to be in some way a representation of their online persona?
No, they're actually playing themselves. So Letty's story is kind of she's Ash. I mean, they're playing themselves, but they are immersed into the story. So, for instance, Letty Does Stuff. She's a streamer, but she's also Ashley's Spanish tutor. So
okay.
And so she and you as the player can invite her over to the house for an emergency tutoring session, and then you can kind of meet Letty, and she tells you about herself, and a lot of it is factual, and some of it is made up for the sake of the story. But we worked close with Letty, and we collaborated with her, and we wanted to see what kind of story she wanted, and the Game Grumps as well. They gave us a list of demands, not really demands, but they gave us some stuff. They came up with some suggestions in terms of storylines, and they gave us they told us what they wanted to do and what they didn't want to do. So it was cool. So we have kind of a guideline, and we're kind of working with them, which it's been a blast so far. It was great with Letty, and we're hoping the Game Grumps storyline goes just as well.
Oh, okay, excellent. Well, okay, so you brought some new folks in. They gave you some story ideas, but for the folks that you brought in earlier to do voice work, because it sounds like you've got a pretty varied voice cast for this. What was their reaction when you approached them about doing voiceover for this game? And did you have a lot of people turn you down, or?
No, I don't think anybody ever turned me down. But I will say early on, I went through like a third party website to hire a voice. So sometimes they didn't really know what they were voice acting for. But that kind of changed because the game got really popular, and then we started getting them reaching out to us and being like, hey, I'm the voice of Frank, or I'm the voice of Madison, I'm the voice of Ashley, et cetera, and it's, we have some really talented voice actors. Bentley Michaels plays Frank, and he's definitely worth calling out. He's done such great work for us, and we really appreciate, he just brought so much. I remember, working out Frank's character with him, and he was so talented. He just sent me a bunch of like samples. He's like, all right, so here's Frank with a little bit of Boston, and here's Frank with more New Jersey, and he was just going into all these different personas, and we ended up settling on what you're hearing in game, and I was like, this is perfect. Do it like this. And he just, every time we send him new lines, he just always delivers. Usually never has to retake any lines. It's really fun guy to work with.
Well, I'm originally from the East Coast, but I left when I was a kid, so I don't know if I'll get this right or not. But to me, it almost sounded like a New Yorker type accent.
Yeah. It's kind of like a New York / New Jersey kind of thing. Yeah, like Jersey Shore kind of maybe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No wonder he's such a douche.
Yeah, exactly right. Wait do you see how he's dressed in the next? Because we got around to actually remodeling his clothing, and it's a treat.
So with all the things that you've seen in the game since, the original alpha versions all the way through where it's going, do you guys, I always like to ask, did you have any strange or funny bugs that came up, things unexpected?
Oh, God. Don, our QA guy, is the resident professional game breaker. So he sent us some screenshots, I'll tell you. Yeah, we've had stuff where NPCs' necks were twisted in the wrong direction, or early on we had a lot of physics-based reactions to combat, which we ended up just abandoning in favor of animations, because they were just like, we'd end up with like characters just getting blasted through walls or through the roof, or and they'd literally be hanging out of walls and things of that nature. But I mean, it renders the game unplayable, so we kind of had to scale that back a little bit. But yeah. But the game itself has a console, and you can get in there and actually mess around with a lot of settings, and you can actually create some pretty fun scenarios just using the console itself, that are just kind of built in. And we allow players access to the console, and there's a whole help thing in there where you can kind of play. And if you ever get a chance, just pop it open one day and play around in there. It's a lot of fun.
Well, I noticed one thing that kept coming up for me was that I kept getting a pop-up about like it was dropping frames or something like that.
Oh yeah.
The system I'm running, I shouldn't be having that problem. And I don't think I was even running it at max settings. Is that something that you've seen as a common complaint, or is there just maybe a setting I need to modify?
Not a common complaint, but it does. If it registers it's getting less than about 30 frames per second, and it might do that intermittently, especially if you have stuff running in the background. But yeah, there's a checkbox in the pause menu that you can just check that off, and it won't warn you anymore about that.
Okay, I think I looked for it, but I must have missed it. So
yeah, I think it's like a performance warning check. It's something like that. I forgot what I named it.
Oh, okay. Well, so looking at Steam, I saw that you guys have had a lot of bug fixes and updates over the last couple of years. That seems to keep you guys pretty busy. Is there any additional or new content that you're working on getting ready to release soon?
I mentioned the combat update, which is going to be a big update in the sense that it gives another dimension to the player, because now they can engage in combat, and again, it's a sandbox game, so you can literally just like you can walk in the door and strip naked and run around, you can walk in the door and start beating people up. So I mean, of course you're going to get immediately your ass handed to you, probably by Frank, but yeah, right. But but it's that freedom that we strive for, and now that we've seen the way that combat's been implemented in the game, I'm glad it's getting implemented. I think it's gonna really add a lot to the game. And other than that, we're working on Leah's storyline. Of course, we have the female playthrough coming up. That's going to be a huge addition. We're kind of holding off on that only because it's going to be a lot of work for us to implement it and then keep up with it as we keep writing stories, rather than just waiting until all the stories are done and then implementing a female version of those stories. So that's kind of something that is going to be like slated more toward like coming out of early access 1.0 release. But those are the major things, I think. And of course, course, we're going to expand on any of the character stories that haven't really been fleshed out yet. We'll be expanding on.
Well, yeah, I did see that there were folks that have been requesting the female point of view, and one of the questions I had about that was that as I understand it, for the most part, it's a bunch of dudes that are writing this. So I guess the question would be, what is it that makes you guys feel that you can write convincing and interesting storylines from a woman's perspective as a man? And I would say that the Jack Nicholson, as good as it gets, answer is probably not the right one.
I don't think that. Well, I wouldn't say that we claim that we could adequately do that without any external help. No, we do it. As I mentioned, we do have a woman on the team. I bounce a lot of ideas off my wife. She in fact, she's been begging me to put a Jello wrestling pit in the game for a long time. I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but she keeps bringing it up. I don't know why. But no, I mean, yeah, we definitely plan to try to get kind of even with the gay content. I have a very close gay friend that I consulted, just to make sure we were doing it right. You know what I mean? So we definitely take that stuff kind of seriously. I mean, I think we kind of get away with more because it's a comedy. It's not really, it's not like we're trying to make a statement in any way, shape, or form other than trying to be funny. But we do want to get it right in the sense of we want it to be appealing to female players. So we'll definitely be seeking, some insight from an actual female perspective when we roll into that.
Well, and I'm not trying to infer that it's not possible either. I mean, even if you look at other writers, whether it be male or female, J.K. Rowling writing, Harry Potter, those are very interesting and convincing stories. The character motivations being very, convincing, all written by a woman, and I almost want to say a majority of the characters I think are male. And there's no problem with that. So, but it is still something that I can see being a question that folks would ask to be like, there's a bunch of dudes on this team. So,
well, like I said, the good thing about our game is that it's the way the story plays out is the player's choice. So I don't think it matters as much playing as a man or a woman in our game because you're still going to make the choices that you want to make. So from a female perspective, there's not going to be a whole lot that's going to be different in terms of the stories that already exist. We are going to write some stories that are going to be female exclusive, and those are the ones we'll probably pay more attention to, making sure that we're appealing to, women that want to play the game. But in terms of, how the story plays out, it's really that choice is on the player. Because, I mean, that was a big tenet of the game from early on, is that we wanted to make sure that we accounted for, the different things that the player could do. So, but I mean, whether or not the player is a male or a female, maybe they would make different choices, but those are their choices to make regardless,
Cool. Well, so you mentioned also earlier folks being able to use a tool set to make their own content. I'm assuming they publish that in Steam Workshop?
No, actually, it's not integrated in Workshop. That's something that we're looking into. It's just we have so much content to get through, so that might be something that we might look at more when the game is technically in a good place, and we're just kind of packing story on top of what we've already got, which we're almost there. But of course, we always decide, hey, well, let's add combat. Okay, so now we've got months of regression testing on combat. So, but I mean, it is what it is. It's it's definitely something that's on our radar, but in terms of when we're going to get to it, we haven't really fleshed that out yet.
Okay. So is there a way that folks can share the stuff that they create right now?
We have a forum right now, and there's a bunch of stories in there that players have created that you can download, and those links are I think you could probably our website housepartygame.com is the best place to find all that stuff. So
okay. And have there been things that the players themselves have created that you've had an opportunity to see that maybe stands out from the rest of the crowd?
Me personally, no, I haven't, but I know our QA has played a lot of them, especially because he's, sometimes we run into bugs that are only bugs in custom stories, just because we don't have any mechanics that kind of are trying to do the same thing in our original stories. So, and he's mentioned that there have been some good ones, here and there, but I unfortunately, just being so busy with the core game itself, I haven't really had too much of a chance to sit down and play those games.
Okay. And so I understand the game is currently available on Steam for Windows platforms, and I know folks have been asking for, Linux and Mac. Are you guys looking to expand beyond Windows, and if so, which platforms, and are you looking at any consoles?
Well, again, we're in Unity, so we have the ability to build for Mac and Linux. We do release Linux builds to our patrons. We haven't officially released it on Steam only because we seem to keep running into issues based on what Unity version we're using, and what sometimes with new content it doesn't play well with certain. And we're primarily Windows users, so we can. There's only so much testing we can do. We can't really test for all platforms all the time. But once the game gets into like a final form and we're solid on the version of Unity that we're going to be using as our final version for the game, we're probably gonna look into porting to Mac and then fixing any issues that might pop up as a result of that, porting to Linux, seeing if there are any issues that pop up there, and then creating a final version of those. But those probably won't get released until we have a final version of the game. But if you're a Patreon though, on our Patreon page, we do give you access to Patreon versions in those formats. But they're buggy because they're, again, we've definitely gotten some reports of issues, and that's why we're not public with them yet.
Okay. Well, wait a minute. You guys are we'll say quote unquote PC Master Racers, which is a title I jokingly accept myself from the rest of the guys on the show, because they mostly play on console, or G will also play on Mac. But hey, when I go inspect a computer, it's like, go get a Mac instead. Where did that come from then?
Well, if you inspect the Mac, it says fucking Mac, get a PC. But if you inspect the PC, it says fucking PC, get a Mac. Okay. So it's kind of a yeah. So we don't actually take sides.
Well, and I know I've seen several requests, and one that I'm kind of curious of myself. Are you guys looking to, at some point, support VR? And then, if yes, which systems? Oculus, Vive, Windows Mixed Reality, etc.? Yeah,
we actually put out a post not too long ago. It was actually a gameplay video of our lead graphics designer playing the game in VR. And it's definitely something that we're going to do once we're done with the final version of the game. There'll be a VR port. But we've only done enough to prove to ourselves that it can be done. But we haven't really gone beyond that. It's really going to be like a huge overhaul of the UI system that's going to end up being the thing that holds us back from that. But we'll be able to focus more on that once we have a final product.
Okay. And are you targeting any VR systems specifically?
No, it should be compatible with anything that works on PC. So Oculus or Vive should work. Anything that works with a computer should work. We don't have any console plans right now, but that's also a possibility that we could look into down the line as well. But we just haven't really given that much thought yet.
Okay. Yeah, for myself, I've got one of those Windows Mixed Reality headsets that so far has been pretty good with the games on Steam.
Yeah, as long as it can run a Windows game, it should work.
Cool. Well, so you mentioned Patreon, and I was kind of curious, like, how the funding for the game came about even before you guys sold all the 500 copies. What was your thought process like? How did you guys set up the whole thing with Patreon and advertise that, and how successful has it been for you?
Patreon was very successful for us. Early on, when I first started, I put out the first build of the game on Patreon, and I said, hey, this is a game I'm writing for anybody who's interested. And it kind of just caught on organically. And we were doing very well on Patreon before we even got to Steam. Then when we got to Steam, we kind of see Patreon's a little different, because Patreon's kind of like you're supporting the developer, so you kind of get inside information about what they're doing, and you get hands-on like early access to what they're working on at the time, but they're not necessarily builds that are ready for the public. So that'll include when we start on our next game, Office Party, that's going to include, builds of that. So it's going to kind of gravitate toward Patreon's going to end up being more focused around Office Party, whereas House Party is going to end up just being out on Steam and these platforms. It's really just it's kind of an all-inclusive developer support thing where you kind of get perks, but you also get access to test but you never get a permanent copy of the game. That's the thing about Patreon, is that you get access to the latest alpha release, but you don't get regular updates updates like you do as if you actually bought the game.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, and so you just jumped to one of my other questions. Then is what future projects do you guys have lined up?
Yeah, so our sequel that we have in mind is going to be called Office Party, and it's the way I envision it, kind of on a just kind of a quick overview is it's going to be obviously an adventure simulation, but there's going to be it's not going to be like just one party one night. I actually intentionally limited House Party to one party one night just because it was my first real game endeavor, and I just wanted to make sure I didn't kind of bite off more than I can chew.
That seems a smart idea, yeah.
Yeah, but now that we've got the engine down, worked out, Office Party is going to be kind of a bigger kind of thing where you're going to have your home apartment, you're going to have your workplace, you're going to have other places you can visit. You're going to be able to meet people in your apartment complex. You're going to be able to meet people at work. And there's going to be an overarching storyline, which is going to be choice driven, where when you go to your job, you could start out in the mailroom and you could either get promoted all the way up to CEO, or you could get demoted to janitor. You know what I mean? So
okay.
So and those kinds of there'll be kind of like a work. We haven't really fleshed it out, so this is all kind of like just high level like synopsis kind of stuff. But you'll kind of make choices and make career choices and kind of have job performance challenges that'll affect how you do in your job, and that will affect what kind of social circles you run in and who you can meet and who you can who's attracted to you, who's not attracted to you, things like that. You know what I mean?
Okay, so you guys released into early access on the 30th of June back in 2017. You're getting ready for the 1.0 release. Is it early next year?
Probably not early. I would say
Okay.
I would say Q2 at the very earliest.
Okay.
Q3 is much more likely, and Q4 is a possibility.
All right.
I mean, it's done when it's done. It's it's software development. We work on what's called like the Scrum method, which is basically means we take as much time as we need to make sure that we have a good product. It doesn't. We try to set up goals for ourselves, but we're not going to rush something out that's kind of half-assed and not really well put together.
Well, and that's cool because the game is currently available on Steam anyway for $14.99. So if somebody wants to get into it now and not wait, they can play the early access version.
Exactly. That's exactly what early access is for. And we've been pretty. I mean, we've put out I want to say 11 or 12 updates since we got into early access. So, and we've only been in early access for a couple of years. So it's not bad. I would say like we're averaging maybe once every other month or so.
All right, cool. Well, I know we scheduled for an hour with you guys, and then I know we're just crossing over that. So there's one more question I want to ask that we like to ask all the folks that come onto the Bamster show. It's just kind of a fun question, nothing to do with game development, but what kind of bacon do you like? How do you like it prepared? And what kind of beverage would you pair with said bacon, be that beer, cider, whiskey, etc.?
I don't discriminate against any type of bacon. If it starts with bay and ends in kun, yeah, it's for me. As far as how it's prepared, not too crispy, but then again, not too fatty. Just it's got to be that, like, bacon's got to be just right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And as for a drink, I'm kind of a Scotch guy. I've been really into Lagavulin 16 lately. That's been, and it actually pairs well with bacon. I actually, I've had it with bacon several times now, and I have to say it pairs pretty well with it.
I have a peanut butter agenda when it comes to bacon. Years back, I went to a place here in San Diego called Corvette Diner, and there's another place now that's got a peanut butter and jelly burger called Slater's 50/50.
Oh, that sounds so good.
It is. It's amazing. So,
there's like a store in New York or something that does that basically they have a whole menu full of peanut butter and jelly items or something like that. I need to visit there someday.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, that game is called House Party. As we talked about before, it's on early access right now on Steam for $14.99. You can find it there. You can find it at houseparty.com. Bobby, I want to thank you very much for coming on the Bamster Show here to talk with us. I had a lot of fun with this. I'm having fun with the game. It's definitely not what I expected from at least the initial stuff that I saw online. And yeah, I'm going to go back when I get a chance and continue my quest to bring alcohol to the party.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.